everyone to an episode of the Old-Timers Comic Book Show, the show where the hosts aren't old, although this guy's a year older, but the comic books most certainly are. Without further ado, let us get into this and bring on the Professor.
Hey, Johnny, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Professor, we won no prize this week. Lucas should have taken that bet.
Yeah, well,
He should have.
he should have taken the bet. He
Should
should
have
have
taken that
should
bet.
have had more confidence in his team.
Therefore, of course, we have the 13th Crusader who has a
Gentlemen,
voice like Batman today.
feliz cumpleaños, Senor Hughes.
Muchas gracias, senor.
Very good.
So before we got started, these guys were giving me grief because the Dolphins got beat, and apparently I can't sound like a winner today because we got beat, and the Pats beat the Bills. Thank you, Professor. And the Giants beat the Commanders. Although I'm always tempted to call them the Redskins.
We're going to call this the Two Winners podcast today.
Yeah. I'll do a quick check before we started going live. You have a combined record of 4 wins. We have 5. So, in your face, basically. Is that how that goes?
The season is still young.
Yeah, but we've already beat the Giants. We only play them once every few years. We've already beaten you losers. We've done you a favour by getting rid of your quarterback for a while. Say thank you.
Well, he's coming back next week, maybe.
Oh, well, we'll see.
Then you'll see.
Normal service will resume on Sunday, I'm sure, Professor, right?
Yes, we will be head-to-head Sunday, and we'll be rooting against each other.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm not making excuses, but the refs were terrible, and we were down 2 starting cornerbacks. So, what we're going to do about AJ Brown, really? Never mind.
Very true.
Anyway,
Daniel Jones is going to be supercharged when he comes back.
what you send him to LA?
Well, no, he's going to come back like a brand new quarterback. You'll see.
Okay.
I'm trying to stick with today's theme.
Oh, I get where you're going with that. Yeah, cool. Thanks. Today's theme is those characters that became somehow or another beyond their normal power set, the superchargers of the comic book world. And it sounds like a really easy topic to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Professor, you cracked a joke about a certain character always being overpowered.
I can't remember who I said. Who did I say?
Jimmy Olsen.
Oh, yeah, Jimmy Olsen.
Any issue with Jimmy Olsen? Yay!
Any issue of Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's low-hanging fruit, but, it's fine. But it's hard, I thought, because when I was thinking back, and we saw this in the chat we had going on before we did the show, I was like, oh, what about Alfred punched out Superman? Yeah, that's injustice. well, what about, and that's outside of our scope of the show. So what about? Oh yeah, that's outside the scope. Have overpowered characters have become more regular now than they used to be? I don't know.
I think it's a familiar trope. I just think I think it's been done to death. To be honest with you, I think we've seen it in the Silver Age primarily, I think, but there were a lot of stories about the characters getting different powers, one or another. I mean, just think of any issue you've read with Superman at a different color kryptonite, right? I mean, it could be like any of those stories that gave him different powers. We've seen, well, I know this is out of the scope of our show too, but the Green Lantern and Brightest Day, right? Was they had a ton of regular or a ton of the regular superheroes getting Green Lantern rings, right?
Right. What about? I had one there, and it's just it popped in my head. Now it's gone. It'll come back to me, I'm sure. 13. Other than the ones we're going to focus on today, who also made the also ran list? Because we got Jimmy Olsen.
Yeah, I was going to mention Dr. Doom, the time he stole the Surface board when he tried to steal the power cosmic. He was obviously supercharged. I can remember off the top of my head the Walt Simonson Thor run where Thor had to put on the belt of strength which doubled his strength for a brief period of time. So that's another one that comes to mind.
They had the Captain America Super Soldier Serum in Englehart's run back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Recall. Hawkeye turned into Goliath.
Right.
Yep.
We talked about that one not so long ago. And what about I had another one there just popped in my head and now it's gone again. Dr. Doom.
How about Molecule Man? This guy was just waving a little simple wand, and then all of a sudden in Secret Wars, it was like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, let's drop a mountain on the heroes.
Yeah, we need you.
Could you argue that Venom is an overcharged, superpowered character because it's the symbiote suit that gives Venom his power? Without him, he's just a regular bloke.
Yeah, but I think we're talking about heroes that kind of got a different, like either a different power set or a supercharged, like you said, power set.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Cool. That was the other one I was going to say. Superman lifting the hammer of Thor.
Yeah. Well, but to your point, Johnny, you could literally do any of the heroes that got the Venom symbiote, which they've done a bazillion times. Not in the timeline, but hey.
Yeah, we recently talked about that on No Prize. Want to know which one we're talking about? Go look at the show.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to it then. Our first book. I'm going to be honest. This was a surprise for me because I've never read this era of this character, other than our Justice League appearances, and it's Superman Blue. It's written by Dan Jurgens, art by Ron Frenz and Joe Rubenstein, letters by DC stalwart John Costanza, and Glenn Whitmore is on colors. So I never saw this around the first time, so I have shed loads of questions about this. Professor,
I don't know if I can answer the questions for you, Johnny, so good luck.
It's all right. We've got 13. He'll give 13 facts. Why this book?
I thought it was a really cool, unique look. I feel like during this time, this was early 90s. So there was a bunch of stuff going on over at Marvel with, Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld and everybody else over there was starting to, really come into power. Mm-hmm. And then you see, different things that DC was doing to try to keep their heroes relevant, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this was the Superman especially was doing something different every couple of months. There was something going on with them. But I actually liked the look of this particular suit. They actually kept it around for a little bit of time, but they actually had him in the Justice League, and they actually did. They ended up calling this one Superman Blue, and then they had a Superman Red later on too. So there was two different Supermans running around, and it was super interesting for the time. But just I don't know if you guys. Well, I'm sure 13 probably knows, but this story was actually kind of based on a one-issue Silver Age story from 1963, Superman Red and Superman Blue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that.
It's Swan Days.
All right, okay. Let me give you some more factoids before we get into this. You can buy this book. It is from May 97. You can buy this book on eBay, various grades. I found it best price at around £8.50. Go collect, have a great 9 at $20.
This was 1997?
97, yeah.
Oh, I'm way off. I thought it was like 91.
No, 97.
Wait. So did this make the cut? Oh, just barely, huh?
Yeah,
oh, wow.
Made the cut. I checked before we don't worry, I checked. Okay. I did the math.
It's just like yesterday, Professor.
It kind of threw me off because it seems so early 90s as opposed to late 90s.
Well, this is the thing. What threw me for this? It's like I don't know a lot about the era of when this came out. So is he still affected by kryptonite? Did Lois wait? What's going on? I don't know these things. I imagine that she waited. Art, I was surprised, Professor. When I think Ron Frenz, I think Spider-Man, and I think Star Wars.
I think Thor. I loved Ron Friends' run on Thor because he made himself look like Kirby. So
For me, this art just does not look like Friends. It looks like Jurgens.
well, I think that's on purpose, right?
What you trying to say? House style Uber Alice?
Yeah, that's Ron Francis. He's the king of house style.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, there's a lot going on. There is a lot going on. I quite enjoyed the story. Did you follow the story after this, then, Professor, or was this a kind of you
So
buying Superman at the time?
back in the day, yeah, I was buying Superman. I do have to admit that this was almost at the time where I culled a lot of my collecting books, and Superman was very close to the list of getting cut, to the point that I think I did cut it, but I don't think it was until after this story. But you got to remember, at this point, we were getting a weekly Superman book.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of Superman.
There was Superman, Action, Adventures of Superman, and Man of Steel, right?
That's correct.
Yep.
And there was a Man of Tomorrow book that came out on skip weeks. So that was a quarterly book that came out 4 times a year. Superman, Man of Tomorrow.
That is a shed load of Superman.
That's you got an issue of Superman 52 times a year. It was
And don't forget the cameos here and there and limited series and things.
Yep. Yep.
Crazy. I didn't realize he was that popular.
This was what? Probably this was 5 years post Death of Superman, right?
Still popular. So popular that it changed his whole persona. That's how good he is. 13th, what was your take on this era? Were you around Superman at this time?
I was a fair weather fan of Superman after the death of Superman. I really didn't go back to really read too many stories, but with this, I get where the creators were coming from. They wanted to do something different. I felt like they were trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm always going to be a fan of the classic Superman with the classic power set and the classic human background, the alien background and whatnot. But I get what they're trying to do with this. In the 90s, comics were victims to a lot of gimmicks, right? So we had the death of Superman. We had to break Batman's back in the DC side. Big things were happening. Image was about the artistic revolution, if you will. Competition was just running rampant throughout comics. So what are you going to do to make Superman relevant? Well, this is an angle that they took. I get why they did it. I just don't think that it was something that was going to stick around forever and say, this is going to be Superman, forever and beyond. With him and his DNA getting altered, I guess with some interaction with Candor, if I remember right, altering his DNA, he lost his vulnerabilities to kryptonite, red kryptonite, or whatever. Everything changed. His vision changed. His whole power set changed. But to change it to electricity, I don't know. I wish I was a fly in the room for that discussion with the creators back then to say, why did they pick an electric power set?
What was the red Superman about then?
I
don't know. Well, there was a blue one, and
read and find out. Well, what happened was I think they were trying to fix him, and they ended up creating another duplicate, but red. But I can't remember if they had the same. They did have a similar power set, but I think it was kind of like kryptonite, like red kryptonite and blue.
Positive and negative charge.
Yeah, positive and negative. But this now, I don't know if you guys remember, but the cover of this book, this was a glow in the dark cover.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, so this was DC doing all the gimmicky type covers too. Nobody can beat Marvel on the gimmick covers, but this one was up there.
I'm going to agree with you guys on the art. So with the design, it is a cool design, ultimately. But throughout the book, I agree. Ron Friends has had much stronger work than what he's presenting here. There's no doubt about that. Dan Jurgens, as I always say, held down Superman for so many years. And, he was part of this too. with trying to give Superman a fresh new look, a fresh new start, something for Superman to tackle that's different than what he's ever dealt with. It's like, as they would have put it, learning how to walk again. So it's just trying to generate that interest in the readers to say, hey, this isn't your father's Superman anymore.
Yeah.
This is the Superman of now. And you're learning along with him, his struggle of trying to keep himself together, literally. So I get that, but it just felt like at this time it was never going to stick.
I'm going to be a cynic on this one. I don't know for sure, but was this a way of DC trying to contravene the Jerry Siegel Schuster copyright?
Well, you still have the naming conventions, so that's what's always going to get argued
I know,
out
but
in court.
you could argue that. I absolutely totally agree. You could argue that, but the word super and the word man are not. They're not unique enough to be used as a copyright in relation to just that name by itself.
Well,
Surely.
from what I understand with the copyright fiasco and whatnot, it really stemmed from the very early issues of Superman, that version, before he was even flying. So it's not just a naming convention, but that also that base power set of Superman from back then.
Which has now changed in this book.
Correct.
So,
Johnny, I seem to remember something about that back in the late 90s. And this was done as a just in case type measure.
all right,
in case
okay.
they lost the case. And now I can't say for sure, but I do seem to remember reading something about it. So you could be right.
I just find it really odd that they've changed so much dramatically about it. You know, he's not even wearing the red and blue, and you know,
If
we
they were
lose Clark, we lose Kal-El, we lose practically everything that we know that we love about Superman.
Yeah.
You know?
well, they should have left him dead if they were that worried about copyright.
Well, that would stop that. That wouldn't stop Superman existing, though. That would just mean that the family of the Siegel and Schuster be able to do their own comic.
I think we underestimate how long they were actually in the courts for.
Mm-hmm.
They were literally in the courts for years and years and years. And not just for Superman, but for all of the properties, Superboy, and even Superboy was still in the courts as of like 10 years ago. So,
and you got to think, I mean, we not to disrespect Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, but those are even Siegel and Schuster, to be fair, but we very hardly ever hear about Siegel and Schuster's troubles with Superman. We always hear about Jack Kirby and his troubles with Marvels, but nobody bangs on about Siegel and Schuster, and still nobody complains about Bill Finger now that he's getting these created with Bob Kane thing at the end, which is not the same as saying he was there, but it's just interesting.
Well, the Siegel and Schuster court case, that was back in the 70s, right before the first Superman movie came out. So that was 50 years ago. So not a lot of people are gonna be talking about that today, but
yeah, we still talk about Jack Kirby.
Because I think Kirby with the death of Lee a few years ago and everything, Kirby was at the forefront. But with Siegel and Schuster, I mean, there was like the families are still trying to get like the families are still trying to get paid. Is what I'm saying. So.
It's funny. Copyrights just recently turned reasonably up here. BBC over here, we've got the 60 years of Doctor Who coming up, and the BBC iPlayer are going to be streaming all the episodes of the classic Doctor Who stuff, not just the recent stuff. With the exception of the very first story, An Unearthly Child, because the guy who wrote it holds the copyright for that story. However, he died, and the copyright now belongs to his son, and the son's got a bit of a thing on against the BBC, so he's not allowing the BBC to show those 4 episodes.
I thought some of the original Doctor Who's never got saved, like they were lost.
I think some were found, or they've been digitized, or whatever, but the majority are available.
So they're called Dr. Ware?
Yes. They are called Doctor Where.
Okay.
They're called Doctor Where did I put that damn thing last? When they fix your voice, I hope they're going to fix your sense of humor.
Well, it's still intact.
Is it?
Yes. My sense of humor, yes.
It must be because you picked this book. Should we take the break first, or should we talk about? Tell you what, we'll take the break first, then we'll come back to it. All right. Where shall we go? I'll tell you what, we'll try this one. We haven't seen this one for a while. Check this out. There you have it, the No Price podcast. The episode dropped the day before this one did. Check it out. You can see Lucas Reneg on his team quicker than, I don't know, the lawsuit about ownership and comic book characters. All right. Next up is the 13th choice. And by his one, he's gone for kind of 1-2 punch on this one. First up is this beauty. Spec Spidey, number 158. I love this era of Spec Spidey for the majority of the time. This is from September 89. eBay, you can get this. I don't understand the price differences on this, so apologies. But on eBay, you can get this in the UK anywhere between £4 to £6. Check the grades. Grade 9 on Go Collect have $90.
What?
I don't think I'd pay $90 for this book in a million years. So I don't know what they're smoking to come up with that. However, it is the first appearance. Well, Spidey gets Captain Universe powers. First of all, what's Captain Universe? Right?
Captain Universe, yeah, was like a cosmic power that hit rando people. And it was I can't even remember what book it was. It was like Marvel Spotlight or something, some anthology series where the Captain Universe power, each issue was a different person. So the different person would come out, he'd do their thing, and then the Captain Universe power would go away. And it was always someone different. This is the first time that they ever had a longer storyline with Captain Universe.
Okay. 13, Acts of Vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got Captain Universe and you've got Acts of Vengeance. What was Acts of Vengeance all about? 13.
All the villains decided to swap partners.
Oh, hey, sounds like Strictly Come Dancing gone wrong.
Exactly.
That's
just
Dancing with the Stars for you guys, for all you.
Exactly. Just to touch up on what Bud said, I go back a little bit further with the Captain Universe powers. It really stems from the Enigma Force, and if you want to learn more about that, you'll have to read the pages of the Micronauts.
Yes, Michael Golden, and who else was involved in the creation of that? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Oh, what you call him? The guy who does all the Bill Mantlo, and Michael Golden.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep. Cool. So the Enigma Force was something that was part of the Microverse, and then later on it was fleshed out a little bit more in the pages of Marvel Spotlight, as Bud said.
Cool. Check us out, knowing all the gen. Who'd have thunk about it? So why did you pick this book, 13?
Well, I had fond memories of this cover and book, mainly because as a kid, I used to go to the library all the time, and then right across after school, and then right across from the library was a newsstand, and I used to check that out frequently. And then I saw this on the stands. I had no idea what was going on. I just picked it up, and lo and behold, this is the first part of Spider-Man going cosmic. And I'm like, they Superman Spider-Man, and maybe more. So I was pretty confused, but then as I read more and more into it, I'm like, okay, it kind of makes sense. But at the time, not too much was known about Captain Universe. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he had made very few appearances, and unless you're a Micronauts fanatic, you're not going to understand the power set.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, we all know that when someone is endowed with the powers of Captain Universe, it's because there's a huge threat on the horizon. What threw me off with not just this issue, but with all the other ones that ensued with Spider-Man was what was the threat going to be?
Mm.
So you had to wait 9 issues later, um, through the pages of Web and Amazing plus Spectacular, to find out exactly what the threat was.
Wasn't it the Hulk?
The threat ultimately was a Tri-Sentinel, a Sentinel that was 3 versions of Sentinels that were combined into one, by
Uh,
and then Spider-Man had to stop the Tri-Sentinel. So yeah, it's a robot, but the threat was a robot was going to ignite a nuclear reaction in New York.
mm.
So
Ah,
that was
okay.
the huge threat for Spider-Man. But so Spider-Man, typical day in this issue, as he's part of the Acts of Vengeance, which I thought was a cool idea at the time,
Mm-hmm.
where you're getting all of these major villains swapping nemesis, if you will.
Uh-huh.
And here you have the Trapster, getting things started for Spider-Man.
Wait. You can't call him the Trapster. Give him his proper name.
Paste Spot Pete.
Paste Pot Pete. There we go. love a bit of Paste Pot Pete.
Paste Spot Pete versus Peter Parker.
Hey, other letters in the alphabet are available.
Yes. So, yeah. So I thought it was interesting only because Spider-Man actually gets defeated by the Trapster. And
Yeah,
I thought it was hilarious. I'm like, so this is kind of selling me on the acts of vengeance, right? Where
yeah,
some random has been villain can come and take out the main character of the book.
yeah.
And this was the theme through for the acts of vengeance throughout the Marvel universe at this time, and I absolutely love it. And just for that concept alone, I thought it was a brilliant idea. It's great cross promotion. There's no doubt
Mm-hmm.
about that.
Yep.
And this just shows you the depth of the Marvel character stable that they had,
Mm-hmm.
that they could actually do this and then pull villains out of the woodworks to fight,
Mm-hmm.
the main character. So in this case, Spider-Man. Uh, in this issue, he has the Trapster. You could see the villains convening and saying, they recruit the Kingpin.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, all these villains obviously can't trust each other, but they even start to buy into, yeah, maybe this is a good idea. We've tried everything else. What do I have to lose? Um, Also within this issue, Spider-Man is endowed with the powers of Captain Universe through a freak lab accident, a la Flash. But it works. I guess it makes sense. Someone sooner or later tapping into that uh, power through some means or another. Spider-Man is confused, obviously, because his power set is completely augmented to a point where he's not going to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So the powers of Captain Universe are so vast, and then you blend that in with someone like Peter Parker, who it worries about everything,
Mm-hmm.
even when he worries about nothing. That's how
Yeah.
much he worries. And this is a complexity for the day in the life of Peter Parker.
Mm.
And he's still married to Mary Jane here. And this is just another wrinkle in the day in the life of Spider-Man among all of his other responsibilities. And he's struggling to cope with understanding what's this for, why me.
Yeah.
It's like a Spider-Man origin all over again. I was bit by a spider. What do I do?
Yeah.
Do I do this for profit? Do I do this for fun? So here's the same thing where he's just trying to understand. Um, what I love about the series for Spider-Man in particular, he fights Titania, he fights Goliath.
Correct. Yeah.
Particularly enjoyed uh, those battles that he had. The Wizard, Magneto.
Yeah.
He challenges the Hulk, punches him into orbit, and I mean, so people were just throwing one villain after the other. Doctor Doom obviously was very interested
Mm-hmm.
in how Spider-Man acquired these powers because he had that same old idea again of, hey, if I was able to steal the power cosmic from the Surfer, maybe I can siphon off some power from
Yeah.
Spider-Man for myself. So there's a lot of things going on, a lot of moving pieces that gelled very well. for Spider-Man. But in this issue, Jerry Conway kicks it off, and I thought it was un Jerry Conway-esque script, but it did the job.
Okay, we brought the creators, so you're absolutely right. Jerry Conway is the guy who wrote the book. You've got Sal Buscema on breakdowns with finishes by Mike Exposito. That explains why the art is so terrible. Colors, Bob Sharon, and letters by Rick Parker. Professor, before we move on to Web, because we'll look at the next issue as well, just as a kind of, I suppose, a tie-off piece. This book, it doesn't. I love this era of Spec Spidey. I thought Conway and Buscema were very old school and very keeping it nice and tight, and you could see that the McFarlane-esque elements of Spider-Man are starting to come in. Some of the poses that they've got him in when he's swinging around, the webs, the spaghetti webs and stuff. Mary Jane's gone all bouffant hairstyle as opposed to the normal flat look she's got going on 90% of the time. Did Acts of Vengeance work for you as a story?
Yeah, I did. I loved Acts of Vengeance, like 13 said when it came out, because it was so interesting to see what you would think of classic FF villains or classic Avengers villains showing up to give other heroes troubles. I remember specifically Daredevil. Daredevil had to fight Ultron and Doctor Doom in consecutive issues, and I thought that was really cool because I was like, well, how would Daredevil defeat Ultron? And it was just interesting stories.
Did Daredevil have to get the power cosmic or power enigma? So then here's my question then, just as because you're our resident Marvel head.
Yeah.
What does it say about Spider-Man that he has to be contrived to get the Captain Universe powers to take on all these bad guys, and yet in all the other acts of vengeance, nothing changed for anybody?
Well, yeah, it's true. I mean, I think when it comes down to it, it was a way to keep it interesting for 9 issues with something going on with Spidey's powers, and then just random villain after random villain with Doctor Doom in the background the entire time. Plus you do see Kingpin and Wizard and everything too. But it seemed to be like it was a really quick 9-issue read when I read them through, and it did keep me interesting. The Spectacular Spider-Mans are definitely more of a Peter Parker book than a Spider-Man book. As like for Amazing Spider-Man, we hardly ever see Peter Parker, but this one he's almost Peter Parker the entire time.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting stuff. It was great to see some of those different villains though. And then of course you say, well, would he have really been able to beat some of these villains if he didn't have the power cosmic? And I would argue, yeah, he would have found a way, and maybe that would have been more interesting.
Definitely, that's how I think. But,
yeah.
So I think that's just to have a look at the next issue along in the trips as well. And I think, you know what, this is a really good shout, 13th. I really like this idea. This is Web of Spider-Man number 59, again from September 89. Spider-Man at the time had Amazing, Web, and Spectacular as their main books. This is, I think, the McFarlane book came out just after this, maybe. But that was its own continuity down the line. I don't know if I gave you prices for the Web one. The Web, you can get this anywhere between £3 to £10 or $38 on a grade 9. Again, who's paying $40 for this book? I have no idea. Written by Jerry Conway again, Alex Saviuk, who we mentioned last time around, on a book that we didn't expect to see him in. Inks by Keith Williams and Rick Parker's again on letters. This seems more soap opera. This is about the Parker cast. I mean, you've got Joy, is it Mercado, the reporter, who was kind of in there for a while, and then Nick Katzenberg, who ends up dating the lawyer. Love those characters. I thought those added a little bit of something to the book that I think was missing. when Flash wasn't around, or Betty or Liz, so they kept everything fresh. Of course, you had the new editor. God, she wasn't relatively new, Kate. They'd been on the scene for a while. So again, that trials and tribulations of work at the Bugle was still there. I liked, can't believe I'm going to say this, but I loved the Savick art. I thought it was just classic house style Spider-Man. MJ's MJ, Peter's Peter. It's a little bit McFarlane in places, but I thought that was a good, solid book. 13th.
I agree wholeheartedly that splash panel to open up the book was phenomenal. It does remind me a lot of earlier Amazing. I want to mention and give a shout out to Keith Williams, the inker. If you've never met him, if you see him at a convention, he's definitely someone you want to stop by and talk to. The guy is absolutely amazing. I love his art, and I could see traces of it on here, although he inked the book. So Keith Williams, definitely someone you want to meet at a con. Awesome gentleman. With this story, again, it's just a continuation from Peter getting the Captain Universe powers, and now he's kind of sharing that experience with Mary Jane and trying to make sense of it. What I liked about this issue, I guess what you were alluding to, Machine, is like how Peter is now a little more grounded in this issue. He starts to become grounded. Like, why me? What do I do with this? Who do I talk to? But then you also get a day in a life during the daytime at the Daily Bugle, which is cool. What I love the most, obviously, you guys are gonna know, is I'm a sucker for Doctor Doom, so he's always planning and plotting. And here's his new brilliant idea of Titania, and all Doom is trying to do is use other villains to throw at Spider-Man because he knows something is up, because he wants to probe Spidey. He wants to know how powerful he's become before he tries to engage directly or indirectly to steal his powers. But Titania was a great shout out. It was something I was not expecting for the storyline, although the cover kind of gives it away. My feelings on the Puma was a character I liked a lot in the mid 80s. And to see him here on the cover was kind of awesome. And in the story, Puma was just one of those guys that he was around, and you didn't know if he was a friend or a foe, but Spider-Man had saved his life, and he forever felt indebted, and to the point where he bought the Daily Bugle in trying to pay Peter Parker back. But I guess the story here is really Titania and how she brought it to Spider-Man. And then Spider-Man really starts to kind of cut loose and starts to wonder, like, she could have killed me 8 times already. But it never happened, and then he's starting to wonder. There's a splash panel towards the end of the book where he kind of unleashes a part of the Enigma Force, if you will, on Titania, and that kind of confirms what Doom kind of already knew, that Spider-Man is not who he normally is. With his power set.
Very Ditko-esque art there, I thought, with the bubbles around the power there.
Yep, that's a Michael Golden thing too, from the pages of Micronauts.
Oh, cool.
With from back then with the Enigma Force.
Oh, cool. Excellent. Webb, it always gets a bit of a rough deal, Professor. I feel it always seems to be like the joke Spider-Man book.
Yeah, it was kind of like it was very much the third Spider-Man book, and it was treated as such too. So I mean, it didn't get the best writers, it didn't get the best artists, and it kind of was a you didn't need to collect Web of Spider-Man. You needed to get Amazing, you needed to get Spectacular. Web, if I had the extra 75 cents, maybe, but there are probably other books that I'd rather get. There's some really good classic issues in Web though.
Yeah. I love The Cult of Love. I thought that was canny. Peter David story, I like that. When he's in the psych ward, not long after Faithful Symmetry, again, very good. I think the art implosion hurt traditional artists like Buscema and Saviak. because they couldn't.
Oh, because they were your traditional Marvel house style. And
Yeah,
then when you started getting more dynamic with McFarlane and even Eric Larson, with like what was going on the Amazing Spider-Man book,
yeah,
this book was left in the dust.
yeah.
I think this title in itself only benefited because of the story crossovers. Otherwise, I don't think it would ever survived if they were self-contained stories.
There was a few years here in the late 80s, early 90s where it was crossing over quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a sales ploy to just get people to buy Web.
Conway was on both Spec and Web at that point. So, and Michelini was on. Can I say it right this time?
Michelini. But anyway, that's cool. Nobody pronounces it right.
He was on Amazing solely, and then of course McFarlane was his own beast. It's really hard. I think for me it was very much for me it was kind of like it's not 3-tiered, it's 2-tiered. It's Amazing Spider-Man's up there, then Spec and Web are on the same because they've got the same writer. The kind of storylines cross over far more easily than they do when Web tries to cross over to Amazing, for example. Mm-hmm. But I guess this is a hold up from Craven's Last Stand, which was again the multi crossover between the 3 books. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and then when the Clone Saga starts, you have to buy all of them to get the full story.
And Spider-Man Unlimited.
Or I like to call that the Marvel Tryout book.
Oh man! Oh, why'd you have to bring up the clones? Oh. Why'd you do that to me? My team lost, and you bring up the clones. Son of a, just you wait.
I actually feel more fond of that storyline now than like 30 years later. But
I call it the Attack of the Clones.
I don't like the Clone Saga. It's a dark day. That was around that time. I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm walking away, and I walked away from comic books for a while. So,
don't get me started on Original Sin. Not Original Sin. What was that? The one with the Goblin and Gwen Stacy.
Sins of the Past.
Sins of the Past. That's what it was. I consider it an Original Sin.
I loved Straczynski's run on Spider-Man up until that point. That Sins of the Past was like, oh no. Wait, what did you do?
Something worse than the clones?
Yeah, if there was an internet back then, he would have broken.
Is this is the Goblin face, isn't it?
It was when supposedly Norman fathered the children of Gwen Stacy.
Is that why she went away?
Yes.
Oh.
That's why she went to France. Yeah.
Sacre bleu.
She wanted to jump off a bridge after that.
Oh, well, she got a wish in the end. Well, hey. All right, last up. I'm not sure if this is super powered per se, but it's certainly taking things to the extreme. It is the classic Venom storyline from Legends of the Dark Knight. This is started issue 16, runs for 5 issues, so it's done by issue 20. Who it's written by is Batman stalwart Denny O'Neil. Layouts are by Trevor Von Eden. Pencils are Russell Braun. Inks by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. Hope I did you justice with that. Willie Schubert's on letters and colours are by Steve Olive. Legends of the Dark Knight, for those that aren't aware, was the kind of book that came out after the success of Year One. And it's there to kind of encapsulate the early adventures of Bruce Wayne. So it's kind of like there's no massive Batmobile yet. He's not a bat god. He fails more than he succeeds. And it's kind of this old school type of storytelling. 5 issues a pop means that the stories do tend to be, I'm not going to say overblown, but I think they do carry a lot of weight and they try and do something a little bit more serious than just your standard kind of Batman story. And I think for the most part, at least the first 25 issues or so, I think they do this really, really well. The hook on this is Bats is in um, kid saving mode. He's down in the sewers trying to save little sissy here who is tied to a chair and going to drown. And for some reason, he can't get that last boulder out. He can't move it. He's not strong enough, and she dies. And that puts him in a bit of a funk. He then gets his ass handed to him after hurting his shoulder in an altercation. When he goes to tell Sissy's father that she's died, he's quite nonplussed about it, and then says, "Oh, I've got this new wonder drug that can increase your strength," and yada yada. And after a spate of recent defeats, Batman, who originally says, "No, I'm not interested," takes the drug. The drug ends up being Venom, which we know is Venom's steroid per choice. Did I say Venom? I meant Bane. Yeah, sorry, I apologize. I misspoke. So it's Bane's modus operandi. Drug addiction story, early Batman. It's absolutely riveting to see Bats go off the deep end, then pull himself back, then get tempted again. Other characters happen. There's like a proto Bane in there towards the end of the run, which is quite sad. But all in all, I think this is one of the reasons why I love Batman so much. You can go back and you can tell these types of stories, and they're just as vital as if they were, the mainstream stuff now. You can get it in a trade paperback, so I would definitely recommend that. That said, it's not an expensive book. Number 16 is anywhere between £3 to £10. Go collect, have it for $35, and it's from March '91. So there you go. Cool. We'll go with Professor to give 13's voice a bit of a break because I'm thinking of your 13th.
What about?
What a pain.
So I was of two minds on this book, actually.
Ooh.
I like the story because I liked. I want to say, is this the dawn of like the decompressed storytelling where they stretch a story out for 5 issues so that they reprint it as a trade later on?
This book is certainly that. I mean, this is the third story? Let's see, fourth story.
Yeah.
You had
Shaman was the
Shaman,
first one, and then,
Gothic.
Yeah.
The one with Blades, was it? The Professor. There was a Hugo Strange one, and then this one. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the story was good, and I liked that it was like it was almost like a Batman Year One kind of, but yeah, you're right. Bruce is not as wise as he becomes. He makes mistakes. He fights with Alfred. He, he's not as buddy with Jim Gordon. So a lot of this stuff is fairly interesting. And of course, in this first issue, he does things that just are not Batman-like for me. He acts stupid, like he wrenching his shoulder out trying to lift weights like a dumbbell, and then later on, and of course, this is the whole hinge of the story is that he takes the pill without analyzing it 8 ways from Sunday, like Batman would actually do. Yeah. He wouldn't put anything in his body until he analyzed it 100%. And here he just takes the pill. And so I was like, that actually took me out of the story a little bit because I went, wait a second, I don't even think Bruce Wayne in his first year as Batman would do this. But to me, I was like, okay, I'm going with it because it's the story. So so after that, once you buy into that, it becomes a nice story. I like that. They do the whole arc where the second issue is him blasted out of his mind on Venom. Yeah. And the third issue is he realizes he has a problem, so he has Alfred lock him in the Batcave for a month. And then issue 4 and 5 is payback time, right? So a nice little arc. There's a reason that Dennis O'Neil was the Batman guy for so many years. He just got the character. And there's, not as much detective work in this, but there didn't have to be. I
No,
think that it was at the end of the day, it's a drug story, right? It's to say no to drugs, kids, kind
pretty
of.
much.
So, yeah, it was. I want to take whatever testosterone he's taken though to have his beard grow out like that in 30 days.
I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying anything.
I think I grow pretty quick, but 30 days, man. He was down there for 3 months anyway.
With no sun.
Right? No bathroom.
Yeah. 13th.
Well, my beard does look like that after 13 days, but that goes without saying.
Of course. Well, and yet you managed to say it anyway.
Yes. So I, I agree with you guys wholeheartedly. It's funny how reading this took me back to the day when Legends 1 came out.
Oh, I love
And I
Legends
was
1.
like, whoa, another Batman title, and I wonder what it's going to be like. Are they going to do like what Marvel is doing and crossover and things like that? No. I loved what Legends did because it really focused on Batman in the early days. It's kind of like a prequel to a lot
Mm,
of other Batman stories that we've read or didn't read or in between the lines or and fleshed out. But if anybody was going to pull a story like this, it would have been Denny O'Neil,
mm,
without a doubt. And what I loved about this, and I'm going to piggyback on what the professor said when, why Batman felt different. It's because he felt guilt.
yes.
Batman's biggest thing is his parents died and there was nothing he could do about it, but he was also a child.
Yeah.
So to witness a child dying in front of his face because he was able to figure out how to rescue her, which is okay, I got to move this boulder, but he couldn't do it. So he failed. And that's what drove Batman to become something that he wasn't. He was overridden with guilt, and that guilt is what drove him to take that venom drug. I just think that this this is what separates Batman from a lot of other heroes and a lot of other comics. He's human. He
Mm,
is so human in here that he's like, I'm not Superman. I can't. Anyone else could lift this boulder, but I can't.
yeah.
But look what happened. I failed. She died. That's a life that will never exist again, and he has to live with that. So then he's presented with something that almost seems too good to be true. Would you not think about it at least for 1 second?
I,
And I think that's what the message of this part one was.
I think there's a nuance there that you've kind of touched on, but maybe potentially haven't fully explored. As he's trying to lift that boulder, he's saying, I promise, I get you out, I promise. And as
Hmm.
he's trying to lift the boulder, he says, and the promise is never broken. And then he fails. And I think that throws doubt in his mind
Right.
about the promise he made as a kid to stop. It's like, oh, if I can't make that promise, then how can I keep the promise I made to my parents? It affects him. You're right. You're not wrong about the guilt aspect at all. But I think there's even greater nuances played on that because of his whole crusade is based on those two words, a promise.
Right. And the only one there to kind of witness this crusade is Alfred.
Yeah,
And even Alfred is trying to ground him and say, you're not going to win every time. You're
yeah,
just human. You have remarkable wealth, you have remarkable intelligence and the will to do it, but you're not going to win every time because the reality is you are human at the end of the day. And I think Denny O'Neil like masterfully captured that without telling you that
yeah,
he was doing it. And
yeah.
I think that's what sells a story. And then, as with all drug stories, the sell is this is going to make you feel better. It's going to make you perform better, or you think that you're this or whatever. It's going to turn you into something that you're not. So, in his
Mm,
brain, he is not only feeling better, but physically, the power of Venom becomes realized. I love
mm,
this storyline because it just ties into what was happening then.
mm,
You have the advent of Bane, the island of Santa Prisca, and now you see like, well, that Venom didn't just materialize; there
mm.
were prototypes, and what I liked about it was they were trying to create soldiers out of it. Seems familiar to Captain America, sure, but nonetheless, this impacted Batman from early in his career. So I loved how it was like full circle. and you had to watch Batman kick the habit with Venom, which was addictive in itself. But
Yeah.
I like how Venom in itself went from a pill to being something that was injected later on. They said it had more of an effect, but great story overall. The art, I think, yeah, is some semblances to year one. I think it does the trick. I have no qualms about it. Very surprised to see Jose Luis Garcia Lopez inking. It kind of threw me off, but I think it works.
I think it catches that old school style, though, doesn't it?
Correct.
That's the idea.
Right.
There you go.
You can see it in the panels, and I think Batman is laughing. I
Yeah.
see a lot of his influence there.
I think I love Legends. I thought Legends was a really good buy. I used to read Legends. When I used to get my back books, Legends would be the first one I'd go to.
I liked it because it was rotating creative teams.
Yeah.
So you weren't getting the same Batman creators every 5 issues. It was a
That's a
different.
good call.
It was a
I'll
different.
say this with the Legends. As a kid reading this, I felt like I was there from the beginning,
No,
reading
that's a
Batman.
shout. It is a
That's what I
shout.
felt like.
Yeah.
I felt like I didn't miss anything with Batman because I read Legends.
And to build on both of those things, the fact with Legends is you could do different stories.
Right.
I mean, I've said how many times I've said that Gothic scared the pants out of me first time I read it, and it still creeps me out a little bit. Mr. Whisper and the No Shadow, you know, Hugo Strange and his fascination, all of it so different to what you were getting in the main Bat books, you know. So it just shows you that especially the Venom storyline shows how much thought and planning went into the idea of Bane. It
Right.
wasn't just a kind of like, hey, let's do this and then just get away with it. I don't want to sort of like cast aspersions, but Doomsday was just like, hey, let's find someone who can beat Superman. Bane's kind of like a little bit more thought out somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but both work, both do their jobs, I suppose. There you go. What's that? Three and a half books.
I read way more than 3 this week.
Good call. Question is, did you read more for this show than you did for No Prize?
No.
Oh.
I did read every Spider-Man book with the Cosmic, and same for Venom. Once I started Venom, I couldn't stop. I'm like, I have to read the other 4.
Yeah.
I remember reading the issue where he's in the cave and being utterly disturbed by it.
Mm-hmm.
But you're supposed to, right? That's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Cool. Sorry, Professor, you want to say something?
No, I read all the books 13 did this week. So I
Oh.
read the entire Venom storyline, and I read all the cosmic powered Spider-Man, and the one Superman book that 13 said.
I didn't read all of them, but then I had them. I have the Bat books, so it's fine.
I actually never read the Venom storyline, so it was
something new.
Yeah,
cool, excellent. I like it when that happens. I like that a lot. All right, there you go. 3.5, and then some up and down. Gentlemen, been a blast as always. Thank you for spending the time.
Thank you, Johnny.
Of course, don't do Venom.
Yeah. What was I going to say there? Don't forget to check out UCPM for all your favorite shows, including Professor
No Prize Podcast, all about the MCU, Disney Plus, and hey, we talk some comics in there too. We manage
eventually. 13.
And a definitive crusade where we talk about all the current DC comic books.
Cool. DC comic books. And of course, if you like to hear about creators and their projects, don't forget to check out Outside the Panels, the interview show of no bounds. There you go. All right.
Free of Venom.
Free of Venom. Maybe. All right.
unless you're talking football.
Yeah. There's vitriol, not venom. All right. Okay. So, gentlemen, it's been a blast. As always, I have been your host, Johnny Machine Hughes. It's that time. Adios.
See ya.